Good morning. My name is Richard Petherbridge, and we're here to talk tennis. And today in particular, we're going to talk about USTA tennis. The first thing I want to do is I want to congratulate Aldo Argana's 4-0 65 and over team that went to nationals this year and made it all the way to the finals of nationals. And I know most of us play USTA League tennis, but very few of us have actually made it to a nationals event. And then to actually make it to the final match of a nationals event is a huge accomplishment. Um, so I want to congratulate Aldo and everyone on that team that did so well. Um, and I think we can all use that as inspiration to see if in our own leagues and on our own teams, we can have that same amazing adventure where we win the league and then we go to sectionals. And of course, the sectionals event is something that's really exciting and interesting in its own right. Um, but then to win sectionals and go to nationals, that is a rare accomplishment, and I think it's something that anyone who has done that, it's a one of the favorite memories that just stick in your mind. So I definitely am inspired by that team, and hopefully one of the teams that I'm on this year will have that same experience. And not only my teams last year in both the 55 and 65 made it to sectionals, and the 65 team actually made it to the finals of sectionals, but we were not good enough to go to nationals. So that's definitely a goal for me and something that I hope to be able to do this year. Um, so talking about USTA tennis, one of the things that the USTA is very proud of is that tennis players live longer than other players. And I've seen the statistic shown that, tennis players on the average can live up to 10 years longer than the national average for men and women. And that's a huge benefit of playing tennis. But one of the things that I want to talk to today is that the USTA should, I think, put more energy and effort into keeping older players um, playing in the leagues. So, one of the things that I've noticed, and I've talked to a lot of other players, is that, for example, on my 65 and over team, we have a player, Joe Tomasello. He's 77 years old. And it's really unfair that there's no 75 and over leagues for him to play in. There's no 70 and older leagues for him to play in. And I'm talking about anywhere in the Southern California area. Um, and there are plenty other players like him that deserve leagues, in the 70 and over and the 75 and over groups so that they can continue to play as they age. And I hope this is something that the USTA will pay attention to and put some effort into in terms of making sure that in Southern California and other areas of the country, that they make a real effort to recruit players, older players, 70 and over, 75 and over. No reason why there can't be 80 and over leagues. And that they make sure specifically in the places, the larger population areas like Southern California or Northern California or Chicago or New York, there should be these leagues. And look, I'll speak for myself. I'm 70 years old. I play in a 65 and over league, and I play in a 55 and over league. But I'm very aware that each year I get older and my body gets older. And there's going to be a time when I can no longer compete against these younger players. And it's unfair that there isn't a 70 and older team or a 75 and older team that I'll be eligible for as I age. And it's something that I think about a lot. And when I talk to other players, they think as well, right? That, look, I want to play tennis into my 80s. So if I'm going to play tennis into my 80s, there should be USTA leagues that I can play in where I get to compete against people of my own age group. And I don't have to compete against somebody who's 15, 20 years younger than me. Um, and I think it's something that the USTA could be proud of, that it makes the effort to retain older players, and it puts the effort and energy into making sure that these leagues exist for the older players, so they don't have to play players that are significantly younger than them. So, one of the things that it would be interesting to do would be to get some input from our listeners, right, as to exactly what the USTA can do to, increase the participation of older players and to make sure that there's leagues for people that are 70 and over and 75 and over and 80 and over. So we would definitely appreciate any suggestions or any ideas that people have um, about how to make this happen. Um, and I think the time is now. There are plenty of people that I play with on a daily basis that are over 65 and who are playing regular tennis. Um, and we need to start now to make sure that we retain those players and that leagues exist for them when they're 70 and over and 75 and over, and they get to continue to play. So, this is something that Aldo and I have talked about, um, you know, uh, and we would appreciate any ideas or any suggestions. I still don't understand completely why the bigger tennis clubs, I'm talking about Braemar, I'm talking about Paseo Club, I'm talking about Calabasas, um, they have enough players, and I don't understand why they don't have 70 and over teams or 75 and over teams. Because the players are there. I know because I'm playing with them on a weekly basis. Um, and we need to figure it out how these clubs start to have teams with 70 and over, 75 and over, and how the USTA um, creates and maintains the leagues for those players. All right. So, that's one of the big things that we want to address in this podcast, and we would appreciate any ideas and, any ways that we can go about making this a reality, because this is something that we really want to do. Um, and look, I'd play in a 70 and over league this year if it existed, right? And there's plenty of people on my 65 and over team that would be eligible to play in that league. Um, all right. So let's move on to some other USTA issues. I mean, I really believe that, keeping older players and starting new leagues for older players is the most important thing that can be done to make the USTA experience better in the future. But there are some other things that I want to talk about, and there are new developments happening all the time. And because I'm 70 years old, a lot of them are going to have to do with age issues. So let's talk about the fact one of the things that we discovered this year when I play on all those 65 and over 3.5 team, that when we went back to sectionals this year, we realized that the team that won nationals last year was competing against us in sectionals. And of course, we knew from having played in the 55 and over and the 40 and over and stuff that the normal rule is that you can only keep four players from a nationals team, and that the other players have to have not played on that nationals team. And we talked to the USTA leadership and found out that there was a sort of special exception for 65 and over players. And we understand the reasoning. The reasoning is because less 65 and over players play and teams have harder, it's harder for them to get enough players to field a team, that they didn't want to exclude a nationals team from being able to play the next year. Um, and so that's why they made a special exception for the 65 and over. Now, we've talked to them, and my understanding is that they have changed the rule a little bit, and that now the rule will be that teams that go to nationals can only have 6 players from that nationals teams. And I think that that is a fairer rule, right? And it satisfies both issues, right? I mean, it's not fair um, for my team or Aldo's team to have to compete always against the same team to go to nationals, especially when they went to nationals last year and won it. And to be honest, we made it to the finals again of sectionals, and it was that team that beat us, right? So they kept us from going to nationals 2 years in a row. Um, and look, we want to have an opportunity to go to nationals, and we want to be able to have that nationals experience. Um, and
Uh,
so we,
by the way, when we play the finals on the 8-0 for our 8-0 team, that team won nationals the year before. So we play the same team again, and they kept all the players. So that's the only point that I want to make. So, but it happens on the 7-0, and it happened on the 8-0 in the final. So because thank God there's a new change of the rules now, and that's not going to happen again. So sorry.
right. No, no, and I'm glad you said that, because it's really important. You know, look, we all want the opportunity have to go to nationals, and we all want a fair opportunity to win nationals. And the fact that both of all those teams had the same experience in both the 7.0 and the 8.0, where last year um, they had to beat, in our case, we had to beat the national champion to win sectionals and go to nationals. And then in all those cases, the team that beat them in nationals was the national champion last year, right? And so in both cases, I think it wasn't fair to have that same nationals team composed of exactly the same players. Um, you want to give more than one group of players the opportunity to be national champions and to go to nationals, and that's why the rule exists. And so I think that the USTA made a good decision by saying, okay, we're gonna instead of having 4, which is the way it exists for most of the other age groups, we're gonna make it 6 for the 65 and over, taking into account that there's just fewer players playing at that level, but also making sure that isn't the exact same group of players winning every year, right? So that other players have the opportunity to get to nationals and to win a national championship. So I'm glad that USTA realized um, that that policy wasn't fair to all of the other players, and then made the change and came up with a rule that seems to address both issues, right? That everyone should have a chance to get to nationals and win a national championship, but it is harder. And I know by talking to Aldo that for us too, it's hard to get a full team at the 65 and over level. And then let's be honest, when you're 65 and over, you're going to have more injuries. So even if you have what you think is a big group, let's say 10 players, by the time you get to sectionals or to nationals, you may only have 6 or 7 players because other players are injured, um, or not available. So it is tough to have enough players to compete really well at that 65 and over level. And there just are less people playing. Um, Another issue that came up when Aldo and I were talking is that we realized that when we went to national competitions and we talked to other teams, that many states were allowing what I call a super team to be formed. And by a super team, what I mean is instead of, a team that wins sectionals or the team that wins league, they allowed that team to recruit players from other teams and other leagues to form sort of a super team that would then represent Texas or then represent Chicago. Um, and then here we are from California, and we've had exactly the same team at the league level, the same team at the sectionals level, and the same team at the nationals level. And now we're competing against these other teams from other states that have different rules. Um, and that's not fair. So look, if you're going to allow, other states to do this, to compete using players from multiple teams, then there should be something that would allow, a California team to also be able, especially at the older levels, because a 65 and over team, maybe you start off with 10 players, but by the time you go to nationals, you may only, three or four players may be injured. And now if you allow that team to recruit a couple of other good players from other teams, they have a much stronger team and they have more depth and they can compete in a more fair and even way against these other teams. And so we're just asking that we have a level competition, right? And that other states not be given an advantage over us by allowing them to form these super teams um, with players from multiple teams and multiple um, sections. Okay, I'm looking at my list to see if I've left anything off in terms of our USTA conversation. Um, Aldo, can you think of anything else that we wanted to bring up about USTA before we move on to Indian Wells?
You cover it pretty well. I think we uh, you talk about everything that we kind of mentioned that we wanted to talk about previous to this meeting right here, and I think you cover all of our concerns, and thank God that we have the 65 so far over league, and we want to expand it. Yeah, I think you cover everything pretty much. So
Okay, well, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about Indian Wells, the BNP Paribas Masters event, because a lot of us from Southern California go to that event, and it's it they like to talk about Indian Wells as the fifth slam, and I have to say, as someone who's been to the Australian Open and been to the French Open and been to the U.S. Open, that it is, in my experience, to be the closest to a slam, right? In terms of just the quality of the tournament, the facility, the way the tournament is run. And so let's talk a little bit about Indian Wells. I think a lot of people either went and saw some live matches there or definitely watched it on the TV. And let's start off with the men's side. And Great tournament, right? Sinner won a very close match against Medvedev. Um, Great match. Also, I think it was good for tennis that it wasn't another Sinner Alcaraz match. And look, I love both of those players, and I think it's great that we have two super talented young players. But you know, I think in terms of just having a little bit of variety, it would be really good for tennis if one or two other players step up. So, like, you think about we used to have Djokovic and Nadal and Federer and Murray. So you had four really talented players, um, and that made a great rivalry. And so now we have the starting of a great rivalry between Sinner and Alcaraz. But it's my hope as a big tennis fan that we'll see a couple of players that step up and challenge those players. Look, let's be honest. I thought Zverev would be the player to do that. He's, kind of been the number three player in the world for a while, and he's established himself, right, as a top five player. Um, but sadly, he hasn't had a very good record against either Alcaraz or Sinner, and hasn't shown the signs that he's going to be able to beat those guys in a big event like a Masters event or a Grand Slam event. Now we know that Medvedev has won a Grand Slam, and we saw him beat Alcaraz in the semifinals at uh, Indian Wells, and I think that's good for tennis. I think it would be great if he dropped off a little bit last year, which is understandable. But if he is able to continue to play the way he played at Indian Wells, I think that's going to be really good for tennis. And I think there's room for a couple of players to step up and challenge both Sinner and Alcaraz. And I think it was good for tennis that Sinner won, right? So Alcaraz had won the US Open and the Australian Open. Um, and, I'm a huge Alcaraz fan. He's my favorite player. But I still think it's good for tennis that he doesn't win all of the events and that, Sinner stepped forward and won Indian Wells and was able to beat Medvedev when Medvedev beat Alcaraz. And so that's good for tennis. Um, Also taking a look at the women's final, again, you see how Indian Wells was able to get the premier players, right? Sabalenka and Rybakina. Now Rybakina had won both the U.S. Open and the Australian Open going in, so she was a little bit the favorite. And of course, Sabalenka is the number one player in the world, and she's been more consistent and more injury free than Rybakina. But it was a great final, and it was really good to see Sabalenka win that. Um, and you have to congratulate Indian Wells, the Masters event, at being able to put on such a great event and having such great tennis. And I have to say, I look forward to going there every year, and I plan my year around spending uh, part of that time at the Indian Wells Masters event. And I think the facility itself and everything, it's an awesome tournament, and I agree that it you know should be considered sort of like a fifth slam.
Hey, Rick, we also talked about maybe putting doubles, mixed doubles more into more of a visual, more of an on a spot. I think you and I talked about that it could be more not put at the end of the singles, maybe before or in the middle, or even more exposure. Most of us play doubles, I think. Why not give doubles more of a chance for people to see how great playing doubles is? Every time I go there, I'm fascinated by watching how good these guys are on doubles too. So maybe they let's not forget about doubles, right?
Yeah, no, Aldo, I totally agree with you, right? And let's be honest, particularly us older players, we're not playing singles anymore. We're just playing doubles. And in a lot of ways, watching a doubles match is more interesting, and it also, gives us ideas that we can take back to our own doubles matches. We see the strategy and the techniques that those players use. And I think it is a fair criticism, right? That um, Indian Wells, along with the other major tournaments, puts the focus and the shine all on the star players, right? So if you're Alcaraz, you're playing, you know, the prime time on the day match or the prime time on the night match, and that's true for Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, Zverev, um, and why not give doubles players some of that prime time, right? Um, and I understand. I think it's also a fair criticism to say one of the problems with doubles is that the best players in the world, right, the top five, Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, Zverev, aren't playing doubles. But if that's the case, then step up and let's give them an incentive, right? There's no reason why Indian Wells or the slams can't provide some sort of special incentive for top players to play doubles, um, and then give those doubles matches prime times where we can see them on the big stadiums at the most convenient times. And I agree, we should be promoting doubles. I mean, doubles is a really interesting format. It's the format that most of us actually play. Um, and, uh, let's figure out a way to get some of the star players involved in doubles. And let's also give the players that are doubles specialists an opportunity to be seen, right, by the fans and, you know, in the prime times. So I think that is a really fair criticism, and I think it's something that not just Indian Wells, but all of the tournaments really ought to think about. Um, I know they've come up with, like, for example, I know um, Indian Wells and the U.S. Open have these sort of doubles exhibitions, right? So in Indian Wells, I think it's called the Eisenhower exhibition, where they have like one night of doubles matches where they get um, the star players uh, both on the men's and the women's sides to play, right? But that's before Indian Wells actually starts, and so most of us don't ever get a chance to see those. And I think it's worth figuring out a way. Look, if you have to do an exhibition instead of, I mean, and I understand, like, maybe if you're Sinner or Alcaraz or whoever, you don't feel like you have the time to play, you know, six doubles matches. But if you're going to have an exhibition, why not have it in the middle of the tournament where all the fans get an opportunity to see it? Um, and you get a chance to sort of build a following for doubles, so that in both Indian Wells and the U.S. Open, instead of having it like the Sunday before the tournament starts, why not have it in the middle of the tournament where you have all the star players um, and the fan favorites playing doubles, um, and all of the fans that go to the tournament get a chance to see it anyway. And we're also open to whatever ideas that people have about how the tournaments can go about, putting more attention to doubles, making sure that they get more television time, which they get very little. It's all the star singles players that are, and maybe you get just a few minutes of doubles. Um, but yeah, I think that the Indian Wells and the other slams could do a better job at making more time and giving more of the spotlight to doubles. A couple of other things that I think are fair criticisms, that even though I love Indian Wells and I go every year, I think these are fair criticisms. And so my biggest criticism is that for people who buy grounds passes or day passes, there's just not enough seats for them to see, on all the courts. And so let me be specific about what I'm saying. I noticed this year um, there are no general admission seats in Stadium 2. So if you have a grounds pass, or even if you have a pass to Stadium 1, you can't go into Stadium 2 and watch those players play. And I think that that's not fair, right? I think that there should be a general admission part in Stadium 2, which gives everybody, look, if your favorite player is playing on Stadium 2 and you have a ticket for Stadium 1 or you have a ground pass, you should have the opportunity to see that player. And if you're willing to get there 45 minutes early and sit in that seat and wait for that match to begin, you know, that opportunity should be available to you. So I would like to, look, I know you make more money if you sell each seat, but I'd like to see a certain number of seats, at least in the upper level in Stadium 2, be set aside specifically for general admission. The other thing that I'd like you to do is on the outer courts, have more seating, right? It's, look, um, I'm fortunate, I have a season pass for Stadium 1. But, I watch a set or two, and sometimes I walk the grounds. I'm going by the practice courts, and I'm interested in a doubles match or something going on um, in one of the outer courts, court 5, court 6, and I see a huge line of people waiting to get in to see the tennis. And I think that's really unfair, right? I mean, you can't charge somebody for a day pass and then not have seats for them to watch the tennis. I mean, they shouldn't have to wait 20 minutes or whatever it takes to get just a seat at those outer courts. And it wouldn't be that hard to increase the amount of seating, right? I mean, you could double the capacity of the seating at a lot of the outer courts, which is pretty small. Um, so I think that would be something that would be a really good thing for Indian Wells to do. I also think that a lot of people like to watch players at the practice courts. And why not increase the seating capacity for that? I mean, I can always tell if, Alcaraz or Sinner or one of the fan favorites, Sabalenka, is practicing because you can't even see, right? The practice court is so crowded. Every seat is, full. People are standing. So you see how popular it is to watch those players practice. Um, and you have like that one area around practice court 1 and 2 that has a fair number of seats, but the other practice courts have almost no seating for people. And so, and Indian Wells has a lot of space. There's a lot of practice courts that they don't hardly even use, right? The practice courts at the far end are almost never used. Why not take a couple of those courts, add significant seating to them, and then, when you're doing your practice schedule, you make sure that, you put Alcaraz on a court where there's a lot of seating. You put Sinner on a court with a lot of seating. Maybe you put them in different locations, right? So you have one of them play practice court 1 or 2, and then you have one of them practice at the opposite end, right? And the same thing if there's Sabalenka or Schwantek or whoever the more popular women players are, um, that you make sure that they're playing on practice courts and there's a lot of seating available, and then it just creates the opportunity for people that have a day pass, um, aren't able to get into one of the smaller courts to watch a match, don't want to sit outside for half an hour, that they can walk the practice courts and find someone who they want to see play and have a seat and enjoy that, right? So those are, I don't think, super expensive, and it's stuff that Indian Wells could do to just, you know, take the to take a really good tournament and make it even better and even more fair for people who, like I said, don't have a ticket in Stadium One, but love tennis and want to see tennis on the outside courts and want to see the players that aren't playing on the outside courts, because obviously you're not going to see Sinner or Alcaraz or Djokovic or Sabalenka or Rybakina on an outer court. So put them on a practice court, have a lot of seats available, um, and let people see them there. And these are all things that, are just going to make a really good tournament even better. Um,
Thank you, Rick. I think we're almost out of time, and you were great. And thank you. If you want to close it out, go for it.
okay. Uh, I love talking about tennis. Look forward to it all the time. And I hope we'll be able to do some more of these podcasts. And I hope people will get back to us with ideas about, how we can get more people to participate in USTA tennis, how we can get more older players to participate in USTA tennis, and then just general things that you want to hear about. Because I think Aldo and I are open to talking about, anything from tennis rackets to strings to USTA league play. So I look forward to talking to you in more podcasts in the future. Thank you.